Alrighty, so we've made our long list. We called programs, we've emailed programs. Now we have our short list of 7 to 10 residency programs that we would feel comfortable going to and that we feel would give us the best opportunity and would be a good fit. And now we need to really start to consider a timeline. I'll go through my timeline, but I'm also going to just kind of throw a disclaimer that every single person's timeline is going to be totally different based on the residencies that are in their short list, based on the order of programs that they want to try and get into, like their number 1 choice, number 2 choice, number 3 choice, etc., and based on where they are in school or in clinic, because that's going to play a big role. I'm going to assume that most people are going to be trying to do residency following school, so they're thinking about residency while they're in the educational portion of getting their DPT, and that kind of makes things a little bit more complicated. So I'll share my timeline and my experience, but know that you're going to have to adapt this based off of your priorities, your graduation date, and the programs that you're applying to. So I've kind of hinted towards it in other videos, but every program is going to have a different start date and application deadline. So what I would do is and what I did was I prioritized the programs. I said, here's my number 1 choice, here's my number 2 choice, here's my number 3 choice, and I went down the list like that. And then I said, okay, when does each program start? So at Ithaca College, we graduate in August, and generally people take their boards in October, and then they start working after that. You can get approval to take boards early, although it's kind of frowned upon. I'm going to make a totally separate video on that, but that is something to consider. Most programs end in May, and then people take their boards in July and then start working after that. Most programs start in August, which kind of fits that May graduation, July boards, August start date for work. So most residency programs start in August, some start in January, and some start in May. It's totally different. Every program is different. So what I did and what I would do is, if I was somebody looking for a residency, is I would say, okay, my number 1 start date or choice start date is this time. My number 2 start date is this time. My number 3 start date is this time. And most of them are gonna fall into one of those 3 categories of generally August, January, or late spring. And then determine, okay, well, where is my graduation date and where is my anticipated boards date? And then balancing all of that, figuring out when the applications for each of them are due. So for me, I was looking at these residencies in November. All of my top 5 choices started in August, which is when I would be graduating, which means I would either have to take a gap year between schooling and residency and find some interim work, or I would have to take boards early and go into residency right after school and have a super packed schedule. Against advice of some people, I decided to do the latter and have the super packed schedule and take boards early. And again, I'll make another video about taking boards early. So then I said, okay, all of the programs, it just so happened to be that all of the programs that I was applying to started in August. I think there was 1 or 2 that started in May, but they were all kind of lower on my list. So then I said, okay, my top 5 start in August, which means I'm definitely going to have to take the boards early if I want to do that. So then I went about the process of taking the boards early, which is going to be the next video, is if you do have to take the boards early, how do you do it? So following this video, I'm going to talk about kind of signing up for boards and taking the boards early if that's something that you need to do. And then after that, I'll kind of get into the residency application process. So for my scenario, I was looking at these programs in November. I kind of got a little bit of a late start on it, not super late though. And then I said, okay, all of the programs that I'm very seriously going to apply to start in August, which means I would have to take the boards early. So then in late November, early December timeframe, I saw approval from the college to take boards early and got that approval, and then I started applying to the programs. So I would recommend applying to programs based on the order that you want to get into them, because all programs have a different application deadline date. Most of them are January or February or March, and there's like some common dates that are in there. I think when I was applying, like February 14th was a very common application deadline date. So I would recommend kind of prioritizing the programs based on interest that you want to go into, applying to those ones first, but also taking into consideration their application deadlines. So if it was any of them in my top 5, I looked at who had the first deadline for application, and then I applied to that one. And then if there were programs that had the same deadline application, I went to the program that I was more interested in applying to. And like I said, I think I ended up eventually applying to 5 that I had sent applications into, and had 6 or 7 more that all had a common application date that was after all of those 5, but I had already gotten into 2 residencies and decided to end up coming to this one. So that's kind of how I would prioritize my timeline and application process, and the way I did it. But you're going to have to really sit down, look at your situation, maybe write things out, kind of use a whiteboard or magnets or something, or sticky notes to figure things out on a timeline based on where you want to go, because that in my opinion is the most important thing. Where do you want to go that's going to be best for you? And then determining if that's something you're going to have to shuffle a lot of things around and do right after school, or something that you might have to do like a couple months off or a gap year between schooling and residency to do, just based on the timeline and your comfort level with rushing that or not rushing it. Then you're going to have to kind of figure out where your timeline in terms of graduation, taking boards, and starting residency is for all of these different residencies, which is where it gets complicated, because you have to do it for each program that you want to apply to, because you don't know what program, if any, you're going to be accepted into. So then after kind of taking all that into account, you need to look at when the programs start and when their application deadline is, and then start the application process. So that's a very quick overview of the timeline. And I'll kind of go onto the computer and show you a little bit date-wise when I was kind of going through all of this, just so you have a little bit of an understanding. And then, alrighty, so I have the calendar pulled up, and I was actually in the process of kind of refining my list, contacting programs, and getting my short list down in this general time slot. So that mid-November to late November time slot, I was really getting serious about residency, figuring out the programs on my long list, contacting programs, and then kind of narrowing them down to my short list. That kind of continued into these earlier weeks of December here. And then come into late December, I was filling out the applications and going through that whole process in this time frame. There was one application that was due somewhere around the 28th. Most of them were due around the 8th and 9th, and then another group the 15th and 16th of January, and then a lot of them were due February 14th. So that was just happened to be based off of the programs that I was applying to. That's kind of when they were due when I was filling out the applications. So I was kind of at the disadvantage because I wasn't ahead of the game really. So I was kind of reaching out to professors saying, hey, can you make sure that you fill out my letter of recommendation on the application portal in this window during the holidays, which put me at a disadvantage because I was just poor planning on my part. And they were busy, and had lives and holidays and things like that. So then I basically, in this whole time frame, was working on filling out residency applications from, let me see if I can get rid of these here, from like December 20th through the end of January, pretty much. I was filling out applications, writing essays, and that's all going to be kind of in the next video, filling out the residency application. But that's where I was filling out applications because a lot of the deadlines were coming up either throughout January or coming into February here. So then I filled out majority of the program's applications until. Okay, so now that we've looked at the calendar, kind of have a little bit of an idea. Again, that's going to be something you're going to have to figure out on your own based on the programs that you're interested in, when your graduation date is, when you want to take boards, and how you want to have all of this come together. Is it something that you're willing to kind of lengthen out the time frame for, or is it something you want to try to get into right away? Following this video, I'm going to make a video on figuring out the board's early application process, at least what I had to do to figure it out, because if you can't get approval to take boards early, if that's something that you need to do to start in August or start in May for programs that start in May and May graduates, then you have to get that approved and figured out before you can worry about applying to residencies, because it doesn't matter if you apply and get into residencies if you can't take the boards in time. And most residencies strongly advise against studying for your boards while in residency and working on an interim license. It's just way too much, and as somebody in residency right now and who has gone through studying for boards, it would be astronomically difficult, and I couldn't even imagine trying to do that. But then after that early application video, I will go into actually applying for residencies, kind of what that process looks like, followed by some interview videos, and then some further videos along with the process. So hopefully you found this video helpful, and if you ever have any questions, as always, feel free to reach out. Thanks for watching.